their eyes for a while and think of themselves as having lost their homes in a cataclysmic disaster like Yolanda. Now you see it, now you don't, and all of a sudden all your belongings, your relatives are dead, swept by the tides, by the devastation, and then you're waiting for homes. And it's already on our third year. Tomorrow at the Red Cross building, we're going to thank our donors and present, and I hope I could do it tomorrow here in the Senate as well, just to show that kung gusto, maraming paraan, kung ayaw, maraming dahilan. And I wonder why we have to look for these areas when, you know, as you say, build better. We have any number of architects here who I'm sure, even if there are fault lines in that area, they can still build a sturdy home.
Yes.
Or maybe you don't even have to build a sturdy home. You must just advise them to make sure that they are prepared for a disaster so that they can make a quick exit in a place where they can go to where they will be safe. Because in that area, as you know, mga bata pa tayo, talagang bugbog sarado sa typhoons, yung area ng Samar, Leyte, Bicol, Surigao, and we have to learn to adapt. And you use that word, adaptation, so many times. And so I'm glad that the gentle lady made my day today because I've always wondered, and I've always heard that reason, wala kaming makuhang lote. Talagang walang makukuhang lote. Because walang papasa halos lahat eh. So, the important thing is for recovery so that the people, like I said, close your eyes and you are now without clothes, you now have no schools, and your children don't know when the next one is going to come from. If we don't have that, spend that money right away on transient homes so that they can recover. Spend that money on livelihood. And as you say, the next question I was going to ask, for example, is, what are your suggestions? I saw you say tofu water is being used for other things, di ba?
For energy.
For energy. Or for that matter, that hospital in Greensboro, is it, in North Carolina?
Yes.
They're using
Wind turbines.
A wind turbine, a renewable energy. What about our country? Are there any suggestions on the part of the gentle lady to be able to make these suggestions so that we could fast track the development of these things for our people? Because, you know, I just came back from, before I left for the break, I had to go to Geneva. And before I did that, I mean, I went straight to Gigarao, to Isabela, and all the areas that have been devastated. And mind you, my friends here in the Senate, that area has been hit by 3 typhoons in 1 month. 3 typhoons, including Batanes. And it took us almost a month to bring our corrugated roofing supplies for the Batanes folks. And, you know, I'll tell you, Mr. President, the people in Tuguegarao, in Isabela, and even Batanes, they're quick. They don't wait for people to help them. Most of them have already put up their homes.
Sanay, sanay.
And that's why nakakahiya ang gobyerno na may ganyang kalaking pera. It's sacrilege na hindi natin magamit siyang pera para matulungan yung mga masisipag na mga tao natin na makabangon kaagad dahil naghihintay tayo ng bureaucratic manna from heaven na may mga gagawa tayo. Is there anything we can do about that, Your Honor? I mean, I'm tempted to conduct a Blue Ribbon Committee meeting just to let them answer for that.
I would encourage you to conduct that Blue Ribbon Committee meeting to compel them to account for the non-use of funds. But first, what can they do? First, we have the 1:10,000 mapping of the Philippines insofar as geohazard is concerned, meaning we have already the vulnerability assessment.
Yes.
We know where to build and where not to build. So whether you are in Batanes or you are in the eastern seaboard area, so they can identify where these areas are. Second, you yourself said, and you're correct, mabilis pa yung mga lokal magtayo ng bahay. And it is said that the stone houses of the original, of the Ivatans withstood the strength of the typhoon because it was built the indigenous
Stone
way.
houses, yeah.
Yes, stone homes. So what we should do is to anticipate the strength and gustiness of the wind and of areas that have storm surges, vulnerability, and tsunami. and build in areas which have been approved based on the geohazard and multi-risk assessment. So assuming they've found an area that they've passed the geohazard area, then to build according to the strength of the last typhoon or 10% stronger than that. So we build something that could withstand something stronger. Then third is to do it the Bayanihan way, and let's not just wait for people from central office from Manila to do it for us. As long as the funds are downloaded, let the community build it. So the use of indigenous materials to anticipate the strongest wind and even have 10 or 20% anticipation of a stronger wind, and to follow the geohazard maps already available.
Exactly. That's what we in the Red Cross did, because we knew that they were going to have a long wait if we are to wait for the government to provide us with land.
Yes.
So those who can rebuild, we allow them the money to rebuild, but only building stronger.
Yes.
6 posts instead of 3.
Correct.
Thick GICs that are tied up by,
Yes.
you know, so far we have not lost the homes yet, and knock on wood. But my point is, why do we wait? I mean, why do we let our people suffer? It's bad enough that you suffer a cataclysmic disaster, lose your relatives, lose your livelihood, and yet the money is there, and it must be terribly frustrating. Naghihintay ka ng pera, alam mo may pera, hindi dinadala yung pera, at ang rason wala kami mapaglagyan ng bahay. Di ba kasalanan sa Diyos yan at sa taong bayan?
Totoo po. Kaya nga po, idinulog ko at binanggit ko sa aking talumpati ngayong araw na ito para tayo ay masyak, magulantang sa pangyayaring ito na daang-daang milyon, bilyong-bilyong piso ang ating pinapagdebatehan at binibigay at hindi po ginagastos sa kadahilan ng walang lupa. E di maghanap ng lupa at gumawa ng ibang paraan. For me, it's sheer incompetence.
Sa tagal ko po sa Red Cross, ang nakita ko po basta bigyan mo yung taong masipag ng paggamit, gagamitin matayo yung bahay. Ang Red Cross po ang nagtatayo yung bahay. Meron tayong mga community groups na nag-identify sa kanila, at meron tayong mga karpentero na nagiging parang advisor nila para diretso yung asinta at natatayo nila yung bahay na lalong madaling panahon.
In fact, kung hindi po kaya ng NHA, bakit hindi na lang mag-agreement with Gawad Kalinga or Red Cross or credible organizations who can build it if they can't spend their funds?
And let me tell you something else, Your Honor, Mr. President. I once was with Sir Nicholas Young, who is the head of the British Red Cross, and we went to Iloilo, your area. And would you believe that the previous typhoon, they built homes that the people don't want to live in because it's so far from the shoreline. Because ginawa lang ng bahay para may pakitang tao, yung mga tao, nagtayo uli doon sa shoreline. Now, this is something that we think we in Congress can help with. For example, if people, for example, if you read the papers today or yesterday, makita ninyo yung shoreline na no build zone, panay build zones. Tinanggal nila yung no. Kinross out nila yung no, ginawa nilang build zones. So, they're still in danger. So, ang sinasabi ko, bakit ba kailangan natin hintayin pang makakuha ng report na katulad yan? Actually, matagal ko nang hinihiling yung mga numbers na yan. And I'm glad the very competent gentle lady from everywhere, because she's Miss Climate, and climate is everywhere, you were able to come up with these facts and figures, which I'm sure, as a civilian, I could not possibly get with ease, no? So the point that I'm trying to raise here is more than climate change participation. You will recall when Senator Biazo and I sponsored the NDRMC law, the most important part there is community resilience.
Yes, you're correct.
And we didn't say it's not natural disaster anymore. I added the word risk reduction.
Risk reduction.
The phrase is risk reduction.
Yes.
I can claim that. I told Pong Biason that, I remember. But that is important for people to remember. We tend to think, nagaya ba si Gordon? Sabi niya, risk reduction. But in reality, I want to emphasize that because you can never have a complete area where you'll be totally safe. Risk,
But you reduce the risk.
You reduce the risk.
If you are
reduce
prepared.
the risk. And
Yes.
you attain community resilience. And you will be able to get more from it a lot faster. And the so-called bureaucrats in the government, not all of them are bad, if they are given just the impetus, just the trust and the confidence that when they really try to innovate, they can bring that 25 billion pesos that is due for 2016, where they have not built that many homes. I would imagine they've only built a few thousand homes, and they could have done it faster. And all they have to do is talk to us here and fine-tune the law so that we can allow them to do that. I'm sure the gentle lady would be willing to sit down with us on that matter and find out how we can push that money further and faster to the area, or for that matter, use that money to further the visions of the gentle lady to make sure that we are we have integrity and climate capability here. Because if we don't do that, indeed, you're going to have similar instances like the one we have in the north, 3 typhoons in one area, and before that, they even suffered a drought. So really, sunod-sunod na po yan. Sunod-sunod na po yan.
And we expect it to be more intense, stronger, more frequent, and this is, as we know, the new norm. And so, you're correct in everything you said, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, that what we need to do is just to adapt. We adapt differently under different circumstances in different geographical areas all over the country. And so, we build our homes stronger, that can take stronger winds, stronger typhoons away from the shoreline, that is approved based on the geohazard maps and the multi-risk assessments made by agencies.
My final question is just by way of an example of adaptation. In Bangladesh, they are often hit by storm surges. And they're always marooned practically from the main highway. So what they did was to build their houses on stilts,
Yes.
and then put in pathways, wooden pathways, so they can get there. And also, they kept losing out on poultry. And what they did was convert the poultry into ducks. So the ducks will swim.
That's really clear adaptation.
Yeah, malapit na maging dicks. No, but anyway, ducks na lang yan. So, ang sinasabi ko, ang sinasabi ko lang ho, is pag sinabi po natin niya, kasi kumisan, there are highfalutin words, and I was listening to your speech intently kanina, nagbibiroan kami ni Senator Subirin, naintindihan mo ba yung climate change? Ang dami mga big words. We have to really make it intelligible to our
I
people.
like your example, from poultry to ducks.
Correct. So, you will know right
My
away.
next speech will be about anecdotes in farms, in little communities, of good stories of adaptation, and it will be titled From Poultry to Ducks.
That's correct. And it's important, especially because the next president of the United States might be Donald Duck Trump. You know, right?
I think it's about time for the U.S. to break the glass ceiling
Thank
and
you very
elect a
much.
woman president, but that would be interfering in another nation's political
I was just
system.
saying that as a matter of comedic relief, because it really is a very tense election, and it's putting that whole world under tension because they don't understand. Like our elections, we are not really picking the best, but we're trying to choose between the best of two, you know what.
Before you go, you spoke about Bangladesh, away from the U.S. now. Another innovation they did in adaptation is very low-tech. In their early warning system, they have red flags where if a tsunami is coming, that would be their signal to their neighbors. They have the buddy system, so they have gongs or bells, and they wave red flags as a warning signal to evacuate to higher ground.
In the Philippines, ma'am, we
Tito,
do.
I would appreciate receiving
3 whistles mean evacuate.
I would appreciate receiving a red whistle like yours for Christmas, perhaps for all of us. You can put it on our desks
Well,
tomorrow.
you just gave me. I will assure you that every senator will get a Christmas
Very good.
present, a Red Cross whistle, but I will also expect that they contribute by way of blood donation or by way of membership so that we can sustain the battles that we have to face, the challenges that we have to face. But
Thank
let me
you.
just commend, Mr. President, the wonderful speech of the gentle lady. As usual, she is like wine. The more she grows further, the more it tastes better. I didn't say older, I said further. See how, that's how much I love her, you know. Thank you very much,
The
Mr.
love
President.
is reciprocated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Villar is recognized.
I just want to make a manifestation to Senator Ligarda. I would like her to visit our floating houses in Laguna Lake.
I am so happy
Yeah,
that you have
because
that.
we made a model of floating houses as climate resilient houses. They float. They go up when there's flooding and they go down again when it's normal.
I am so happy. I'll be so excited. You told me
it's,
about that 2 years ago. You have it
it's,
now. Very good.
It's they have a pontoon, so the houses go up and down dependent on the level of the water.
Is this
So,
low-cost housing?
Yes, but it costs double more than the normal houses because of the technology. It's Dutch technology. So if you want to visit it, I can host a lunch for you. There's a multi-purpose center floating also.
Oh.
And there are 4 houses floating, so you can see the technology. So if it's adaptable, it's kind of it's a little expensive than the normal houses, but it floats.
But
So,
perhaps it will be cheaper in the next couple of years when the
yes,
technology
so
becomes more affordable.
I want to invite you there
Ah,
and the rest of
thank
the
you.
senators who would want to see the technology.
That's very
Thank you
exciting. I learned that from you a few years ago, and now you have it already installed. Congratulations. Congratulations. Thank you for that
Thank you, Senator
invitation.
Villar. Senator Ontiveros is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would my fellow woman senator yield to a few more questions?
Of course, it's my pleasure to once again address my colleague who always joins our hearings, whose valuable contributions are much appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, you said that limiting global warming to below 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels would actually increase the growth of the Philippine economy by at least 1% in the 2040s. And you pointed out, importantly, that this is consistent with our vision in Ambisyon Natin. It also sounds to me, Mr. President, like this would also be consistent with our country's commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals. So would you say, Mr. President, that in fact, becoming a party to the Paris Treaty would be like filling a gap, the last piece of a puzzle, and a last piece that would fit in perfectly with the almost complete puzzle that we have assembled up to now?
You're very correct, Mr. President. In March 2015, we acceded to the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction for the next 15 or 20 years, which succeeded the Yogo framework for action insofar as disaster risk reduction is concerned. In September of 2015, as a member country of the United Nations, we also acceded to the Sustainable Development Goals, which Your Honor mentioned, which you know very well. On April 22 of 2015, or 2016, we inked our agreement with a signatory to the climate agreement, which was discussed in Paris in December of 2015. Sendai, SDG in New York, the climate agreement. And the only thing missing now to complete our vision of Ambisyon 2040, Ambisyon Natin, is our ratification so that we can be part of the talks and actually continuously access possible assistance, whether financial or technical. And so that if the industrialized nations who committed renege on their commitments, all of us have loud voices so that we could fight for compliance. If we are outside the group and we don't ratify, we could be deemed as isolationist in the world, and we will just watch them by and just have, I can't imagine such a scenario.
I join you, Mr. President, in your not being able to imagine that kind of a scenario. You also said, Mr. President, that the Philippines emits only 0.3% of the planet's carbon footprint. And in fact, that is sort of a resentment expressed by climate deniers. But isn't it so, Mr. President, that if under that principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, we don't do our part, what we can do, despite being a very low-level carbon emitter, eventually, if the planet irreversibly starts to deteriorate under our feet, all our other work will come to naught. So we might as well do what
Yes.
we can despite our little contribution to the whole problem.
Yes, Mr. President. Actually, I'd like to correct myself. When we say that we're only a 0.3%, there are many other nations, I don't have the number now, much, much smaller than us. And when I said it once, I was corrected by Dean Tony Lavinia of the Ateneo School of Government. He said, actually, if you put the 0.3 together with the other developing nations, that's 1/4 of the total greenhouse gas emissions in the world. The US, China are the biggest emitters with double-digit GHG. But the 0.3, if you put that with 10 other nations, that would ng ibang paraan. For me, it's a major emission. And so, other nations, much, much smaller than us, have ratified. So it really makes good economic sense even to ratify, because you ask, will it set back development? And we are not a major emitter. Why should we ratify? Why Maldives? Why Kiribati? Why Palau? Why Marshall Islands? And then, if they say it will stymie development, why would China, a developing nation, ratify? Why would India, a big economy that's developing, ratify? They must know something we know but don't want to accept. Yes.
Or another way of putting it, Mr. President, no excuse not to ratify.
Yes.
Mr. President, you already addressed the point about coal-fired powered plants and heavy industries in interpellation by Senator Gatchalian. Also the point about, well, other concern, Mr. President, is about the climate fund, that this is still made up of pledges not yet being drawn down, and therefore the concern about, so therefore how do we compel especially the industrialized nations to actually fulfill their commitments? But I'd be satisfied to pursue that in further discussions with my fellow woman senator. Just as a last point, Mr. President, we heard in the news that the President had said that he would lead the country in ratifying the treaty after a certain cabinet meeting. And so with that hope in our hearts, Mr. President, I hope that the good fellow woman senator will take not 6 hours, as wished by Senator Subiri, but only 5 hours to convince the President to lead the Philippines in ratifying the Paris Treaty.
I believe
Thank
the
you,
cabinet
Mr.
meeting
President.
referred to by the good senator was last week. Again, I cannot claim credit. I was not in the cabinet meeting. I don't think it's necessary for me to meet the president. I am certain that his economic managers, his economic team are more than enlightened and more than qualified to explain the Paris Agreement to him. I admit having lobbied early on in the administration, as early as July, sending everyone memos and emails and calls and texts. Yes, to that I plead guilty.
Mr. President, I would forgive the good senator her good crime, and in fact I would appreciate her advice to us in the Senate if what would be a proper and effective communication from us, maybe from the Senate to, is it to the Department of Foreign Affairs, is it to the Office of the President?
Whistle like yours for
Express our
Christmas.
wish,
Perhaps
our
a sense
desire
of the Senate.
that
Make a
in
manifestation
fact,
to
there, I can hear
Wonderful
the good
speech
fellow woman
of the
senator
gentle lady,
starting to
as
speak
usual.
about it,
She is
in
like
order to further
speech
encourage,
of the gentle-
our DFA and the President to, in fact,
Mr. President, the wonderful
What we could do
Thank you, Mr.
for
Mr.
that,
President, the wonderful
before we end
speech
is
of the gentle
to
lady,
urge
as usual.
the remaining
She is
departments
like
to submit their
wine.
certificates of concurrence
The more she
Thank you, Mr. President.
NDFA,
And both CCO
Senator-
and DFA to transmit the...
Thank you very much,
The
Mr.
love is reciprocated. So it's
Thank
on
you.
his desk. To be fair to him...
I didn't say older, I said further.
Because only 10
The more she goes
departments
further,
out of 33
the more
have
it
submitted
tastes
it.
better.
And so...
I didn't say older, I said further.
Before we hear it, we
See how, that's how much I love her, you know.
If you've not, okay, you just
President.
return tomorrow for your budget.
Senator Villar.
The last point, Mr. President, if the good fellow woman senator would lead us in that, maybe the Senate could recognize those first 10 and call on the remaining 23 to make their submissions to the desk of the President.
Yes, especially
Thank you,
now
Mr.
that the President has signified that he is inclined to ratify it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Ontiveros. Senator Zubiri.
Yes, Mr. President, with the permission of the Majority Floor Leader, to close, I'd like to quote the father of J.B. Ejercito when I met him one time, and he told me, I do not know the big deal about climate change. My problem is climax change. Sabi sa akin. I know that is not a problem of the Sun JV, but I'd like to strike that off the record. But I would like to congratulate
I was about to ask
once
you
again.
if that was germane to the topic.
No, but I just wanted the good Senator J.B. Ejercito to hear what his father had told me and good advice. But
Thank you.
with that, let's try to strike that off the record. But levity aside, I congratulate the gentle lady for her wonderful speech.
Thank you, Senator Zubiri. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, move to refer the privileged speech of Senator Legarda to the Committee on Climate Change.
There is a motion to refer the privileged speech of Senator Legarda to the Committee on Climate Change. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, there's two items on housekeeping. Upon the request of Senator Win Gatchalian, and after getting the approval of the Minority Leader, Senator Recto, the principal author of Senate Bill number 812, entitled An Act Institutionalizing the Grant of Teaching Supplies Allowance for Public School Teachers and Appropriating Funds Therefore. With the consent of the body, I move that Senator Gatchalian be made the co-author of Senate Bill 812.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Senator Gatchalian is made co-author of Senate Bill 812.
And then, Mr. President, upon request of Senator Joel Villanueva, and after getting the approval of Senator Lacson, principal author of Senate Bill number 44, 45, 252, and 255, with the consent of the Chamber, I move that Senator Villanueva be made co-author of Senate Bills 44, 45, 252, and 255.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, Senator Villanueva is made co-author of Senate Bill number 44, 45, 252, and 255.
President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, November 8, 2016.
Any objection? There being none, session is adjourned until 3 o'clock the afternoon of Tuesday, November 8, 2016.